Sacramento police officers announced the arrest of 72-year-old Joseph James D'Angelo, um, who they believe to be the original Night Stalker slash East Area rapist slash Golden State Killer slash whatever the ransacker name was. So they're stating that they have DNA evidence and other uh, ticks and tricks. I have no doubt in the belief system on the part of law enforcement that he could potentially be the suspect. But I guess this my kind of reluctance to just go outright and say, yeah, they got him, was built on the idea that, let me say hello to Lion, um, that when you have a case that goes decades and decades and decades and decades, as this one did, 40 years without being solved or really having any kind of person come forward where they announce some major break in the case, it does get to feeling sort of unbelievable because you get used to this mystery. When I was a little kid and I had this interest in watching material related to various crimes. It was the original Night Stalker and the Zodiac Killer that I was pretty convinced, are very convinced, we would never find out who they were. I mean, their crimes by the time of my childhood had been what, 20 years at the very least ahead of me even being aware of being in existence. Now, obviously, we found out that the Zodiac Killer was Ted Cruz, but in finding out that or having it claimed that this man who's just been sitting in Sacramento is supposedly this big time murderer slash rapist, I do get to kind of feeling in that same state of this can't be true. This was this big time mystery that you lived under. It was something that you just learned to cope with. You say, well, I'm just always gonna have to think to myself that there were 5 or 6 uh, rounds of homicides with 12 people murdered and 50 women raped, and we're never going to figure out who did it. I have to put up with that. That was the view I had at that time. Well, Dirk, actually, before you again, that's kind of what I'm trying to say here. The guy is still a suspect. We don't have any actual um, convictions yet, so I don't want to go out and just say, oh yeah, they got him. Yeah, that case was probably, if I were to make a list, because at one point was a very large frequenter of these various unsolved crimes and murderers and all that. That case was probably in the top three of just being the most chilling in terms of ones that still weren't solved, because he would go into these houses at random and even changed his modus operandi after being taunted for not going in houses where males were there. So now, in seeing just that information chewing in the back of my head, and then remembering what was described about some of these murders, I mean, we're talking about shining a flashlight in your eyes as you're waking up and then shooting you, or tying your arms up in a diamond knot and placing large, were those plates on your chest, and warning that if I hear any of these plates move, I'll move back in here and slit your throat. Just there was a whole bunch of the information described in those documentaries, and also by people who recalled having encounters with them that creeped me out. And I really hope that the two guys in all these documentaries relating to him, and reading this case, so and this is really something. I'm still kind of on the fence about if this is truly the end of it. Um, but what always used to get me were those two guys in all the documentaries. One of them had I think you know what I'm talking about if you ever seen any of the documentaries. One of them had a bald head with a goatee and kind of a gruzzle, a gruff kind of voice. And I remember one of his lines was, uh, I didn't catch him. And he really felt anguish over the fact that he was in charge of finding out who that was, and years went by and still nothing. So I hope he's still around to see this. But there was also another one who I think had brown hair that also uh, talked about just there were these two guys, two officers, or I think detectives, that every documentary about the original Night Stalker, they're in it, and they always say the same thing relating to, he did this. This guy's scarier than the other murderers. This is the evil. So uh, I hope that they're able to get the vindication they want. I really like it when you can have a majority of the surviving victims, that weren't killed during these homicides show up and finally see that person that you know did uh, evil acts toward them get their just desserts. There's a certain level of gratification I get from that, even as a person who is not involved in the case. It's just nice to see that develop. But yeah, this if he truly is the murderer, it is the end of an era in terms of just the way I looked at a lot of these cases because I truthfully had that case, the Zodiac Killer, and I think there was another one that still, I know that two of those still aren't solved, where it was just those top three were never going to be figured out, and you had to just write it off as as they described, Caucasian male that said, I am going to be evil and I'm going to disappear into the night and you'll never find out who I am. So to have that now just suddenly be lifted, all in the course of because they've done. I remember I think it was 2013. They had a resurgence campaign where they reopened the case and were airing stories in the local news about chipped paint or something to that effect, and their belief that they were going to catch them, and nothing happened. You didn't see anything, and then all of a sudden they start airing this weekly show on HLN about the case, and then they say, "Oh, we're getting new reports." Even with that, I just wrote it off. I said, "Whatever." I could say my neighbor 5 streets, what do you call 5 streets down, is the is the suspect, and you still would have no proof of it other than my word, and oh well, he moved over here the same year that the suspect stopped murdering in that area. That would be the gist of my logic. Well, this one didn't sound real to me either. Dirk, remember, we're talking about someone that murdered 12 people and raped 50 women, or I think it was 49 or some number that is slightly below that. Who again would break into houses, flashing lights in your face, would tie your hands in a diamond knot, would put plates over your chest and tell you, don't move. Would go into your refrigerator and eat all of your meals and drain your resources. So this case also didn't seem real. The person described, I'll put it this way: there is a boogeyman uh, that we've talked about, whether it's a molester, a killer, anything, and that was one of the boogeymen. That was just one of those freaky characters that sounded so bizarre and so strange that you couldn't believe they existed. And really, how could you believe they existed other than someone telling you this is what happened? You're not calling that person a liar, but to hear someone act in such an outlandish manner in more ways than one made you think, okay, well, uh, that person is really good at masking what they do, so much so that decades afterward, we still can't figure out who it is. And then all of a sudden, you wake up and oh, news report, suspect named, and people are saying, yeah, we finally got him. And then you say, wait, did the last 20, 30 years not happen? 40 years of suspects being believed to be the guy and then turning out to be hoaxes? So I think it could go either way. Um, I prefer for him to be caught, obviously, because I think that there should be charges levied at people who do things of that nature, and he really has distinguished himself in the worst possible ways with his criminal behavior. So I am hoping that it's him. I will wait for more evidence to come out, And I've kind of had a reluctance to really speak about cases like this, at least when they're not solved. There's not some major development because you get this association where people say, "Why are you interested in that? Why are you into this?" Uh, so we'll find out. But anyways, thank you for watching. Hopefully it's him, and check out some of the documentaries relating to this case. You will get much more information than what I could let on because it truly is a spectacle to even hear about. There was a woman who was alleged to be the suspect as opposed to the perpetrator because of her relationship with her murdered. I think it was her father who he killed, and also his wife. So there's a lot to find out and learn from this case, indeed. So thank you, and have a good day.